distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Australia-China Future Forum 2019. The vision of ACFF is to provide a high-level platform where VIP speakers can discuss significant areas of interest and concerns between Australia and China. By doing so, we are facilitating and promoting a better mutual understanding and foster a more positive bilateral relationships between the two countries. The theme for the forum this year, 2019, is on the 5th anniversary of CHAFTA, China-Australia Free Trade Agreement, which was signed back in 17th of November 2014 at the Australian Parliament House, Canberra. ACFF was founded by the Honourable Dr. Helen Shanko OAM, which was the first Chinese-born Australian Member of Parliament. And also, Mr. Ian Tan, Director of Rudd and Tan Consulting Group, was the co-founder and convener. For ACFF this year, 2019, Dr. Helen Shanko has invited Dr. Jim Harrowell AM, the New South Wales Special Envoy for China, to join the committee as co-chair. So moving forward, we'll be having the chairs to deliver welcoming speech. First, may I invite your warm applause to welcome the convener and the co-founder, Mr. Ian Tan.
Well, thank you, Amy. Before I start, may I acknowledge the traditional owner of this land and pay my respect to the elders past and present. Dame Marie Boucher AD, the Honourable Andrew Rock AO, the Honourable Dr. Jeff Lee MP, Mr. Hong Ring Gang, the Honourable Dr. Helen Shampo OAM, Dr. Jim Holloway AM, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Ian Tan, the co-founder and convener of the Australia-China Future Forum 2019. Thank you all for coming today. First of all, I would like to thank the Honourable Andrew Rock AO here. Without you, we won't have this great event today. Second, I would like to thank our founder and co-chair, the Honourable Dr. Helen Shampo, OAM, and Dr. Jim Holloway AM. I'm sure most guests coming here today, apart from Andrew, will be because of you. Thank you so much for your effort to make this forum happen. Third, I'd like to thank Mr. Jimmy Ye, Winston Chow from ACY Security, Ms. Wendy Ma, Mr. Lee Wei from Swan Y Group. Thank you so much for your support, and we will look forward to hear from your panel. 5 years of CHAPTA is a very important and significant moment for both Australia and China. We choose this as our main theme this year, is expect to promote the Australian-China relation, especially the trading relationship between two countries. We hope this forum can help Australian and Chinese have more understanding about the CHAPTA and have a positive impact to the bilateral relations. The forum today will have a range of speakers and different panels to cover different industries, including finance, technology, import, export, health, art and culture, and at the end we'll have an overview outlook of the future of two nations. Last but not least, I would like to here acknowledge the organizers of this event. They are the Rudd and Tan Consulting Group, NetEast Australia, and Wonder City. Especially, I would like to thank Ms. Momo Zhang and Mr. Paul Wong. Without your hard work, we won't have such a great, successful day today. In conclusion, I hope you all enjoyed the forum today. And again, thank you so much all for your support and coming here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. Ian Tan, the convener and the co-chair of ACFF. Next, moving forward, we'll be having the founding chairwoman, and she's also the first Chinese-born parliamentarian in the Australian history. So let's put our hands together to welcome Dr. Helen Shanhong, OAM.
Thank you, our Master of Ceremony, Amy Su, a beautiful MC for us today. First of all, like Ian, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and pay my respect to the elders, past and present and emerging. Also, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome and thank you for each and every one of you for coming today to this forum, Future Forum. Particularly our very special guests, you are all special guests, but some of my good friends like Dame Marie Boucher, we know one another for over, 40 years now. She called me little sister. And of course, our keynote speaker today, the Honorable Andrew Robb. We went back for a long time too, before he was a minister for trade in the federal parliament. Of course, my other good friend is Jeff Lee, the Minister Jeff Lee. He is Minister for Skill and Tertiary Education. And also now is deputizing for other portfolio awards, like multiculturalism. So congratulations to Jeff in particular, because he has actually 2 ministerial portfolios at the moment. And all the other guests, of course, the other one is Jim Holloway, my co-chair today. Jim has been known to me for a long time too, and he'll be introduced later, I'm sure, because of the fact that he actually knows China better than I do. He actually had been to China many, many more times than I do. Of course, he'll be introduced as a national Han and Han solicitors, and he is the partner there. I think he is the senior partner or the owner of Han and Han solicitor, because I was a solicitor before, and that's how I knew Jim as well. And all the other distinguished guests. Of course, today, I very briefly say that why I am so passionate about this Future Forum for Australian Chinese people. Because I have been here for over half a decade, and I want to acknowledge the contribution of Chinese in Australia. We have been here for over 200 years. So last year, we celebrated our contribution of the Chinese Australians in Australia. This year, as Ian said, it is about the relationship in trade in particular. I think we all know we have 1.2 million Chinese in Australia. I think the majority of the people who came here, apart from this old Chinese like myself, it is really the trade investment that attracted so many Chinese Australians being here. And it is high time that we should acknowledge the importance of this relationship. And it so happened that the Honorable Andrew Robb, who is a friend, is willing to come to tell us about this China-Australia Free Trade Agreement, which is so important. I won't steal his thunder, but I really think this is the starting point that we should be better for everybody concerned, apart from Australia and China, and I think it with the whole world as well. So I will say here because I'm going to say a bit more later. So I hope you all have a very worthwhile and fruitful day today. And tonight, of course, we're going to have a gala dinner. And I do hope those, or all of you, can stay, unless you can't. So you're very welcome to stay at our gala dinner, which will be a fantastic night, because it is going to be very enjoyable as well. So have a good day, and thank you again for coming.
a.m. The next speaker will be inviting our co-chair, we'll be inviting our co-chair, which is the New South Wales Special Envoy for China, the co-chair of this event, Dr. Jim Harrowell AM on stage.
Welcome everybody to this forum. The last time that I spoke in this town hall about China was in 1997, and there was a memorial service organised by the Chinese community following the death of Deng Xiaoping. That was a momentous event, and I said as part of my remarks on that occasion that Deng Xiaoping, the architect of the open door policy for China, would make a fundamental change to the world economy and to the world in general. Clearly, China opening its door was one of the major events of the 20th century. And Deng Xiaoping had that vision to open the door, and since then we've seen the most extraordinary changes in China, really quite remarkable. That event, of course, followed the recognition by Australia of China early in the 1970s. But I think the third momentous event in our relationship with China was the China Free Trade Agreement negotiated by the Honourable Andrew Robb. China and Australia have economies which are complementary. We need China and China needs us. And I think with a lot of the debates that are going on in the world today, I think with great respect to some of our politicians, we need to be more thoughtful about the relationship. There will be areas of difference. I always say to clients when they go to China, China is different, but just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. So hopefully we'll hear some wise words from Andrew Robb today, and we'll have a good discussion about the importance of the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. So next will be may I please ask you to refer to your attention to the screen for a short video on chapter. So 5 years ago, at the Australian Parliament House in Canberra, the significant chapter piece of agreement has been signed and witnessed. Back in time, it was the Honourable Tony Abbott, the 28th Prime Minister of Australia, witnessed the special signing, and the Honourable Andrew Robb AO, who was the former Trade Minister, were representing at the signing ceremony to sign on this piece of very significant agreement. So today, the forum have welcomed the Honourable today to attend the event. So next, we'll be holding our warm applause to welcome the Honourable Andrew Robb AO on stage.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A special welcome to Dame Marie Bashir, who's an outstanding Australian, of course. To our hosts here this afternoon, Helen and Ian, thank you and congratulations on putting together an event which I'm really proud to be part of, and it's a great honour to celebrate, I think, what is one of the foundations, I think, of our relationship going off well into the future, the Free Trade Agreement. If you look back through history, you see that trade is invariably, the opportunity for trade has been a source of much success and prosperity and goodwill between countries. The absence of trade, the closing down of doors, has been a source of much friction and conflict over hundreds of years. It's a very potent part of our life, and the more that we can, with countries such as China, share an open borders in that sense, and work together, learn to understand one another's cultures, the differences often spur a lot of new thought, and it's been one of my great pleasures to, I think, go to China about 50 times now in my lifetime, and there's not one visit that I haven't learned something new, been challenged in my thinking on all sorts of things, and it just enriches your understanding of your own responsibilities and your understanding of the motivation and the goodness that comes with others. Could I also acknowledge our 60 million years of outstanding Indigenous community, the longest standing Indigenous community in the world, and reflect on what they've got to offer in the future as well. The world is awash with change and uncertainty. I mean, it's always the case, but I think the last year or two, it's been even more so. The extent of change and uncertainty. But from all of our experiences, if you think about it, experience tells us more often than not that a business climate such as one of change and uncertainty invariably presents many, many opportunities. And I was in Melbourne a couple of days ago, and over breakfast, I'm just looking at the local paper, Herald Sun, and there's a small article on page 29. I thought this is highly relevant to what we're talking about here this afternoon. It just shows that in the midst of uncertainty and challenges, there's all sorts of opportunities that pop up. And the fact of the matter is, it reported that since June, China has been imposing tariffs of 93% on American wine, up from 48% before the hostilities began between the two countries over trade. And of course, it's in retaliation to the Trump administration having slapped tariffs on more than $360 billion worth of Chinese imports. So in response, we're seeing now the Americans having to pay 93% tariffs, and unless the two countries reach a truce, those levies on US wine in China will ratchet up to 106% on December the 15th. By contrast, Chinese levies amount to 41% on wines from the European community and heading towards zero from Australia, Chile and New Zealand. Now think of the opportunities already. We're being represented here today, one of the major sponsors, a significant wine group and an Australian wine group that's doing so well. Now there's pockets of these opportunities, hundreds of them, that grow out of the Free Trade Agreement. We wouldn't be in that position with wine And if we take proper opportunity now, we can consolidate a foundation in China which will stand us in good stead for decades and decades and decades, and increase our prosperity, introduce us to one another more fully, and have an appreciation of the sorts of products that we've got. So one possibly small example, but a powerful one of really what we're trying to rejoice over. The 5 years that we've had to date, I think it's been an outstanding success because Jim referred to Deng Xiaoping, who of course was the father of opening up China, and there's 500 million people now not living in poverty that were. It's a humanitarian miracle that we've witnessed, as well as a most extraordinary period of growth and prosperity. And what's good for China has been good for the world. And today is about how do we celebrate some of the things that are making that happen, such as the free trade agreement, and how do we sustain it? How do we sustain it? It is that state of mind, I think, mirrored by the success of us opening up to China with wine and them opening up to us, for instance, and many other products. That's why we should approach the future between our two countries with great commitment and confidence. Ever since the Australia-China Free Trade Agreement came into effect in December 2015, the commercial relationship between our two countries has only become stronger and stronger. I think since I left Parliament 3.5 years ago, I've been to China about 30 times, and a lot of it's been at a more commercial level, looking to encourage business both ways to make use of the free trade agreement. And what I've witnessed is, at a commercial level, the relationship has just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And what it suggests to me is the more that we get to mix and get to understand one another and appreciate the cultural differences and to appreciate what one another brings to the table, the more we do that, the more effective is our relationship. Now, we've had some political issues, and they'll come and go. The fact of the matter is that China is a communist state, and Australia is a liberal democracy. It's different. As Jim said, it doesn't make either one any better, but what it does mean is that there's a difference. And those differences are going to throw up tensions from time to time. And it is all our responsibility, I think, to, in those sorts of environments, to focus on those things that join us together. And there's far many more issues that join us together as countries than push us apart. But the fact of the matter is, the 1.2 million Chinese Australians should be very proud of their homeland and should be able to be very proud of their homeland, but at the same time be very proud and enjoy their existence in Australia. There's no contradiction in that. And to do that properly, we've got to be realistic about the differences and rejoice in the relationship. And the relationship, as I said, where it's most intense, at a commercial level, we've got on extremely well. Where it's most effective, at a commercial level, many of the 1.2 million Chinese Australians are playing a very critical role in helping that supply chain, both ways, be more and more effective. So many of our big companies nowadays has very strong Australian-Chinese representation, which is making the whole process of trade and investment far more effective. So I do feel that the facilitating role of that community is a very significant part of the presence, the success of the last 5 years, been able to use what's in that free trade document. Of course, that free trade document was seen by the trade establishment, if you like, in Geneva, etc., who were always sceptical that Australia and China could do what they call a quality deal, that it would be significantly open, that it would be fair to one another. And to the surprise of all of those in Geneva and other places around the world, they were completely blown away with the quality of this deal. China did bring to the table the intent that they had been saying they would of truly opening up. And of course we're a very big beneficiary in Australia of that. Australia had been an open economy for some time, and now with the two of us opening up, we're starting to see the extraordinary success. Of course, China's our largest trading partner, which has been said, but they now take 30% of all of our exports of goods and services, 30% of everything that we produce and seek to export. But of course, you might say, so what? Because China is the biggest trading partner for about 130 other countries in the world. But the fact of the matter is that that Australia is China's 7th biggest trading partner. They might be our biggest trading partner, and that's very important to us. But when you think about it, a country, we're a big size in landmass, but a small number of people, we're China's 7th biggest trading partner. It does signpost the importance of one another. What China's good at, we need, and what we're good at, China needs. And we've been very fortunate to have two very complementary economies. Many countries are not in that situation. There's not a lot of things that they need from one another. In our case, it's almost everything China does well we need, and everything we do well China needs. And that's going to stand us in good stead again for many, many, many decades to come. On full implementation, the Free Trade Agreement will see almost all of Australia's goods to China will enjoy duty-free access. Now again, that just blew away the people in Geneva. They couldn't imagine that they would open the doors to a country that in the G20 in such a way, a big export country into the bargain. This includes exports of virtually all of Australia's clean, green agricultural produce, our aquaculture, our horticultural produce, exports of virtually all of our resources and energy and manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, including vitamins and health products, to China. In CHAFTA, China offers Australia its best ever market access commitments on services, other than what China has agreed with Hong Kong and Macau. So we've got the best services deal of any other country. We've got literally, you take the health space, we've got literally hundreds of concessions in the health space which no other country has got. And they will get them over time, but we've got the opportunity, and it's being taken. The last year, the biggest growth area of trade with China was, of course, health. And the services opportunity is enormous. As China transitions from being a largely industrial manufacturing country to now a consumer-based economy, the services, 80% of our GDP, of our whole national income, is derived from services. We're very good at it. So many of our services are world-class, first world-class services. We can have a significant role in facilitating China's progressive adoption of widespread services, and it's quite an exciting time, because we've traditionally sent products, but you can't put services on a boat. You've got to go and put down some roots and get to know the culture and get to know the people and get to know the way business is conducted if you want to be successful. And the trade agreement facilitates, it makes it easier for Australian businesses to do that. And it's getting easier and easier. There's more we can do, but it's been hugely successful to date. The opportunity for Chinese entrepreneurs, for instance, to invest in Australian service providers, gain experience, and then establish an arm of that business back in China with the related IP is a model that's being widely adopted, and it's going to be very successful. Coming in and trying to run and buy 100% and take over something is often very difficult, no matter which country you're coming from. But to come in and buy a significant investment in a company, bring that capital, which helps the company grow, but learn about that business and then take it back to China and grow it in both countries is a model that's already been proven to be effective, and it's one which is, I think, very, very attractive. And again, the Chinese Australians who know both cultures well are very, very well placed to facilitate those sorts of deals which are taking place. For goods entering Australia from China, of course, since January this year, all tariffs have been eliminated since the 1st of January in 2019. So for lots of products, you'd look, a lot of our fish products and many other products, we've got a very, very distinct advantage over many other countries around the world who still face significant tariffs going into China. For goods entering Australia, there's no tariff on anything coming in, and on 98% of our goods going into China, there's no tariff being confronted. So it has meant that key Australian exports to China, including, as I mentioned, wine, most fruit and vegetables, seafood and some dairy products, face a zero tariff into China. And as a consequence, for example, this has seen, over the last 12 months alone, we've seen Australian beef exports increase by 34%. 34%, it's a remarkable increase in a product which was already strongly sold into China. We've seen wine exports increase by 65%. We've seen dairy exports increase by 38%. And we've seen navel oranges increase by 57%. These are the opportunities that we're starting to see emerge. And as the US plays games with China over trade, more and more of these opportunities are going to emerge. And once you've got a foot in the door, you can build that relationship forever. And this is creating new opportunities where there's very significant growth year on year on year, and it's a wonderful thing. As I said, services make up 80% of our GDP. China's offered its best ever service opportunities, and it hasn't opened up greatly to many other countries with some of those opportunities. But there's whole areas for banks, insurers, securities and futures companies, law firms, professional service suppliers, education services, health services, aged care, construction, manufacturing, telecommunications, all these areas where at the service level Australia has got first world practices, and there's much to be gained by joining forces between our two countries on this. But not only that, of course China will progressively open up to other parts of the world with services. But we've built into the agreement what's called a most favoured nation clause. And what that means is that if China offers a better opening or a better opportunity to any other country, we will automatically have it matched. We will automatically get that benefit with this most favoured nation clause, which we've got. So it's protecting us into the future to maintain the access and the comparative or the competitive advantage that the trade agreement is providing to us. In the face of domestic and international challenges, China's economy is undergoing a rapid structural transition, as I mentioned. If you looked at exports as a percentage of China's GDP, it's halved from 36% to only 18% since 2007. So that's what's called a really massive structural change. Gone from being a big exporter, they still export furious amounts, but the growth has not been in the exports, it's been in the domestic. China is becoming a big consumer market in its own right, and that's reflected in those numbers. And it tells us something about the dynamics sitting behind these changes in China. Again, from the point of view of confidence, how does a free trade agreement sustain and build the advantages that we've had for the last 5 years? And you look at what's happening behind that transition. You look at the millennials. The millennials are those people who were born between 1980 and 1994. So they're typically now between 24 years and 38 years of age. They're called the millennial group. And that group are now entering the middle class, not just in China, but across Asia. There happens to be 834 million Asian millennials. 300 million of those are China. That compares with 66 million millennials in the United States. So you've got 830, of which 300 million are in China, compared with 66 in the United States. Now, the US is a powerhouse, but what it tells me is the demographics and the success that China is now enjoying, and other countries are starting to enjoy by following suit, such as Vietnam and Malaysia, etc. The region is enormously strong. There's mountains of capital around. You know, I am not one to share the pessimism that's been prevailing for 20 years, but not delivering about about things that are going on in the world economy. And I do feel that you've got things like these demographic changes, which are going to desperately change and upgrade demand. You get 300 million millennials coming into the middle class in China, educated in digital, well-educated, ambitious consumers, etc., etc. You're going to see generations almost of demand and opportunity. It's all about opportunity. And so I think all of us here should feel enormously encouraged by what's going on in the world around us, and particularly within our major markets such as China. And I think we can trade and invest with great confidence, and the more we trade, the more we get to know one another, the more we it seems that, you know, you look at the Australian-Chinese cohort that now lives in Australia, 6% of our population. It is now the biggest foreign cohort in Australia, or immigration group in Australia, is now the Chinese community. And it has been, of course, they've been here for 200 years, but a very significant number have come in the last 25, 30 years. And that introduction in the last 25, 30 years has been almost seamless. It's been very successful. There does seem to be a situation where Australians enjoy working with, living amongst, having Australian Chinese as part of their community. Compared with lots of other introductions of migrant groups over the last century or so, this has been a relatively seamless, without incident, very effective, has brought lots of intellect and enthusiasm and family values, etc., things that do line up with what Australians appreciate generally. So it's been a very successful transition within Australia, And I think we can all take heart, not only about the commercial opportunities, but certainly the opportunities that exist for all of us at a personal level, building relationships, enjoying one another's company, and appreciating the differences, and looking forward to harmonious and strong and prosperous and hopefully a healthy future. Thanks for this opportunity and all the best for the day.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honourable Andrew Robb, for your first kick-off keynote speech. As we know, 5 years ago at Canberra at the signing, the representative and the signatory on behalf of China were President Xi Jinping of the People's Republic of China, and as well as the Mr. Gao Hucheng, which is the former Minister for Commerce at the time. And today we welcome the next, which is the second keynote speaker. Put our hand together to welcome Minister Councillor for Economic and Commercial Affairs of the Embassy of China in Australia, Mr. Huang Rengang.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. I'm honored to be invited to this Australia-China Future Forum. I'm an optimist. I think that the future of Australia-China relations bodes very well, because I witnessed the announcement of the conclusion of CHAFTA 5 years ago in the Australian Commonwealth Parliament. And when our President Xi Jinping was making a state visit to Australia. And then actually in the year following, in June, that official signing ceremony for CHAFTA, Mr. Andrew Robb and his Chinese counterpart, Dr. Gao Hucheng, signed in the Australian National Gallery, Gano Hall. And I was also there participating in the preparation of the Chinese delegation led by Dr. Gao. Actually, at the end of that year, I took part in another event that is at the end of 2015, that is December, there was a ceremony here in Sydney about exchange of note of ratification of CHAFTA. Then I remember that was done by the then Chinese ambassador Ma Zhaoxu, and then the Deputy Secretary of DFAT, then ambassador to China. I'm glad to see that over the past 5 years, CHAFTA has played a very important positive role in promoting bilateral economic relations and trade, because the data, the statistics shows that bilateral trade since then has been growing, both trade in goods and services, and growing several folds. Just now, Andrew Robb gave some figures, details about that, give you some idea about the size of our bilateral trade. In terms of trade last year, it's about $215 billion, and of which about 10%, over 20 billion are trade in services. And if you look at the trends of the bilateral trade, we have a reason to be optimistic about the future. Of course, because the Chinese government has been taking some measures to further improve its investment environment, to further open up to the outside world. For instance, that we just concluded the second session of China International Import Expo in Shanghai, where Australian business, Australian products and services have been well presented and represented. And I'm glad to see that for the trade part, they signed contracts worth more than $370 million. Even during the first week of that session. And I'm glad to take the opportunity to see that this year marks the 47th anniversary of the founding of the diplomatic relations between China and Australia. I agree with Rob when he said there are differences between our two countries, But China this year happens to be the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. I should say the Chinese people, the Chinese government, and even a lot of overseas Chinese, they are proud of the development and the leadership of the Communist Party of China over the past 70 years. We have done a lot. China is the country, according to the United Nations statistics, which has possessed the comprehensive manufacturing capacity for almost all the categories, all the sectors, all the industries. Very few countries on the earth has that capacity. China is one of few of them. And we are happy to see that we have established strong integrated economic trade bonds with many countries. Australia is a very important trading partner of China. China, Australia are comprehensive strategic partners. We call it a relationship, right? And I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for your participation, contribution over the years to that relationship, to the growth of that relationship. Because I understand that almost all of you here are involved in the process of promoting our bilateral exchange dialogue, promoting mutual understanding, deepen our mutual trust. You have done a lot. We thank you. We want to take the opportunity to say that we are grateful to you, and we're confident joined together, we can continue to build these relations deeper, broader, to the benefits of peoples both countries. I thank you, and I wish this forum great success. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And since 5 years, with the signing of the chapter, the bilateral trade relationship has grown significantly. At the state right here, the state of New South Wales has always been very outperformed with the trade, open-minded and open trade and investment, have facilitated a lot of friendships, have fostered a very harmonious multicultural society. So next we'll be asking your applause to welcome the Honourable Dr. Jeff Lee, MP, which is the Minister for Skill and the Acting Minister for Multiculturalism on stage.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and can I say a big thank you to Helen Sham-Ho and your leadership today, and Ian, of course, for hosting us today. And Helen, as we said, was our first person with Chinese heritage to be elected to the New South Wales Parliament. Well done, Helen, a true trailblazer. But as I always say when I'm up here, I have the first two. I'm the first person with Chinese heritage that was elected to the lower house in the New South Wales Parliament. So, like brother and sister, I would say. Can I? Thank you. Can I thank Andrew Robb for your optimism and your leadership in the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement. And I think there was no bigger champion in the Australian government than you yourself, sir, in your push to actually make it happen. And today you outlined those fantastic successes that has been between Australia and China and the mutual reliance, you know, by both countries on a fantastic economic relationship, but more than an economic relationship, a relationship built upon trust and respect. And I think we all have to remember that any basis is not between two countries, is actually about different people working together. And that mutual trust and that mutual respect is so important for the future. And so thank you, Andrew, on your optimism. And I think it's great because clearly, as Australia, success depends upon its international open borders and its trading relations, that we must, whilst we do have differences from time to time, we can acknowledge those differences. But we must get over those differences and work out behind closed doors, to work out what is best for both countries. And clearly, a strong and robust and open relationship between Australia and China is essential. Can I thank the Deputy Consul General from the People's Republic of China? You have a long history and a very proud history as well in the free trade agreement between Australia and China, and thank you for your words. Can I say that, of course, we heard from Jim, and Jim talked about the open door policy. And can I say of Deng Xiaoping many years ago, and I saw firsthand those results some 40 years ago. It was the first time I travelled to China, a very different China of what we see today. And I remember going to Beijing, and it was a very different Beijing that you see today. But the economic success of China, no one can doubt, into one of the leading economic powerhouses of the world, and the future will be certainly successful if the past is to judge. So on behalf of the government, can I say to everybody here, we have 1.2 million people with Australian Chinese heritage, and I think that's our real success. Is my ancestors came 100 years ago from China, but those people-to-people relationships are so important, that continuation of that dialogue is so important, that we can have that mutual trust, that mutual respect, that is the basis of business to do, so that we can not only understand each other's culture and our differences, but so that we can actually successfully trade together. Finally, can I say that the New South Wales government certainly welcomes any Chinese investment. Can I also say that the New South Wales government also welcomes any Chinese students to study in New South Wales. And we should acknowledge that, in fact, international students are the largest services export to New South Wales, and the Chinese students make up a large part of that. So we welcome the students. On behalf of the government, can I thank the forum today? I should acknowledge you, Dame Marie Bashir. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And when you were governor for those many years, I would see you on a monthly basis. Now it's not so frequent, but it's a delight to see you, and everybody loves it. I love how he named the plane after you too, the firefighting plane. That was very good. Well done. That was very special. So when you see the plane goes over putting out those bushfires, we always remember you. So it's very nice. On behalf of the New South Wales government, can I thank everybody here to thinking about the future forum. I think it's an important, not just economically, but in terms of our people-to-people cultural links that we need to progress forward. Thank you very much. I'm Jeff Lee, MP for Parramatta, Minister for Skills, Tertiary Education, and Acting Minister for Multiculturalism and a few other portfolios. It's an absolute delight to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Jeff Lee.